Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Greg Gabriel Talks Football. And I stress that another because it's the second one this week. You asked for it and you got it, Greg. Thank you so much for making time.
Oh, yeah, you asked for it.
That's right. Well, I was referring to the fans. They were the ones asking, and I'm the intermediary.
Okay, you're the go-between.
How did your appearance on the Irish Bear Show go yesterday? I haven't seen it yet.
It was good. They were good guys.
Yeah, those are great guys.
I'll tell you, they're pretty knowledgeable too.
Yeah. The international football fans are so into it. In fact, we've got somebody in the chat room, Chris Watts. He's from across the pond too, and he is a religious viewer of this show and is always commenting. Look at it. He says, "Hey, Greg and Aldo, bear down, mate."
Going on, Chris.
Yeah, so it's great to have those fans as part of the Chicago Bears global fan base. So I'll definitely check out that show over the weekend. This episode, one of the things I want to cover is how teams are building rosters at this point of the year. And we just talked for about 30 seconds or so before we went on. And you said that what is going on at Hallis Hall is different than what is going on in most NFL organizations because of the new staff. So Take us through some of that, what is going on. What are they doing to get started? What are the new things they need to accomplish?
Well, a week ago, Monday was the first day most of the new coaching staff was in the building.
Mm-hmm.
Some were even included towards the end of the week. So they've all been together for just over a week.
Mm-hmm.
First order of business, I would assume, this is the way we did it and a couple times when we had new coaching staffs come in,
mm-hmm.
was each coach is going to evaluate his position. You know, can he do what they want him to do in the scheme? How good is he? Does this guy look like a reliable football player, et cetera? And they'll make some decisions on that, especially if there's contracts involved. You know, like James Daniels is out of contract. Do we try to re-sign him? Do we want to move him to center from guard? So the coaching staff, and that's really not Ryan Pace and his crew saying this. Now, the pro staff, except for Champ Kelly,
mm-hmm.
is still intact.
Okay.
And probably will remain so until at least the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and they've got their reports too, but you want to see if they're going to coincide with the reports from the new staff.
Okay.
And what's interesting is it could be dangerous when you're evaluating your own players because you just subconsciously think they're better than other guys.
Yep.
Well, so that's the beauty of the process this year because there's no ties to these guys.
Yeah, there's no emotional investment.
Right. And so they're going to say exactly what they think, where the guys in the pro scouting department, they do have a little bit of an investment in these guys already. So that'll be an interesting take. Will any of that ever come public? I doubt it.
Mm.
Everybody's going to be a great player when they're talking, but then you're going to find out, okay, who they going to try to go after, like the little receiver and punt returner. His contract, I just read late last night, the date on his contract to go void is today.
Okay.
So you either re-sign him today or he's a free agent starting tomorrow.
Wow. Okay. So big decision needs to be made.
Well, you could sit and let him hit free agency and go from there. Now, here's another problem with the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
They got rid of Joey Lane, who was the contract guy.
Have they replaced that position with somebody?
Nope, not yet.
That's interesting.
And I think it's months off.
Wow.
So that means somebody in the building will be handling that.
Please say it's not Ted Phillips. I'm just kidding.
No. Well, Ted negotiated contracts before there was a salary cap and stuff.
Right.
But then when you had and they got one of the best guys in the league in the building,
Mm-hmm.
who was still there from when we were there. He's been there 21 years now, or 20 years now. Is Cliff Stein, but he's the corporate attorney now for the Bears. So he's doing a lot. His hands in a lot of different fires.
I bet they
And so, does he have he's got the wherewithal, no question.
Mm-hmm.
Respected all over the agent community as a very fair negotiator, real good guy. Cliff can do it up until they hire a new guy.
Mm-hmm.
There could be a guy on another team that they want, and they know they can't get him until after the draft. Something like that.
Yeah.
So again, it's a hypothetical because they haven't announced anything. But I know if you got to get stuff done, there is a guy who can do it, and he does it as well as anybody.
And just as an aside here with Joey Lane, why do you think they would have dismissed him during this really busy time where his services could be of some value? Do you think it's because they're talking about things for the long term and they don't want anyone, involved in that?
Well, I got my theory on some of it. I don't know if I want to say it over here, but
go ahead.
there's a lot of people in the agent community who don't like that guy.
Oh, really? Is that right?
And whether that means anything to the Bears hierarchy, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But he's gone. He was Ryan Pace's right-hand man.
Yeah, because he brought him from New Orleans, right?
Right. He was the assistant cap guy in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And so he brought him up here, and then Cliff, who was doing it, he was also the corporate attorney at the time. But now, especially with the stadium project, I can imagine all the stuff he's got to be involved in, from a legal standpoint. But like I said, Cliff is here. It wouldn't surprise me if Cliff is the guy who's going to be doing that stuff until they hire the right guy. Okay. And maybe that's next week. But, if anything has to get done between now and that actual date,
mm-hmm.
Cliff, I think, is the guy who's going to be doing it. And I'm guessing. I stress that I'm guessing.
Gotcha. Now, just a technical process question. When these all of these new people are looking at tape, I'm assuming that the Chicago Bears has an outstanding database where you just open up like some kind of spreadsheet. It says defensive lineman, and there's tape collated and edited so that you can go through that in an organized fashion, as opposed to it being a mess like my desk here.
Well, that's an interesting question because just since I left, so working on a full-time basis, the technology has completely changed.
Right, big time.
Okay,
yeah.
So what we used to do, our tape back then was not digitized, which it is now.
Right.
It was all on beta.
So you pull out the cassette and put it in, and this is
right. But what we do is like when let's say I'm watching an offensive lineman and I'm going to do 5 games,
mm-hmm.
and it's the coach's tape. We do, all of us, anytime any of us look at tape, not the coaches, but the scouts, myself, Jerry, we would time what we call the time codes. And it's basically making it's not a highlight tape, it's a profile tape, because really you put the extremes on there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing the good, you're seeing what's average, you're seeing the ugly, because you got to, when you're evaluating, you got to see the ugly to have a correct evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we used to, like I say, at the start of the play, and have the hours, minutes, seconds on there. You'd write that down. You'd write down the end of the play, and you'd have a sheet, maybe 20, 25 plays on it for that game, and send it down to the video department, and they edited it, pulled those plays into the thing. Well, now it's so much easier. You can just about, from what I understand, is put in, okay, number 44 every game, and you can get every play.
Yeah, that's got to be outstanding to be able to have that resource available for the people who are evaluating players. That's the way to do it.
Because, Coach, on a road game, it's so instantaneous now. You can watch tape of the game on the plane coming back from a road game.
Yeah, that is fabulous. That is so good. But, you and I are old enough to remember when the film had to go to the lab and you had to wait a few hours.
Trust me. Down in the basement, I got that big 16 millimeter Kodak.
You still have it, huh?
Darn right. I don't know if it's worth anything. I keep holding on to it, thinking, maybe that's some golden egg or something.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an artifact. I mean, you used that projector to scout some really big names in pro football. So that
was we used it it's one I got the day I started working for the Giants.
Okay.
So it still works.
Wow.
Give me some film. I can use it.
That's good to know.
But we've had about 4 different types of technology since then.
Yeah.
And that thing, how about this? We used to have to carry those when we made school calls.
Yeah, those are like 15, 25 pounds. Depending
probably 15 anyway.
Yeah.
But you'd have to carry it with you, so you got to take it on the plane. Can you imagine going on a plane with one of those things right now?
That ain't gonna happen.
No, the problem you'd have getting through TSA, or even if there's this big carrying case that comes in that's got padding on the inside, so it's not to get damaged.
Right.
They'll look at that, they'll tear it apart. In fact, I was doing this thing for the Giants. Jerry Angelo was the first guy who did it before I got there. We called it the box. And it was, I might have mentioned this on a show, but we were way ahead of the curve. This is what actually started using it before the combine even started.
Okay.
And then used it for years after that, because we were doing stuff, timed short distance agility, change of direction drills using this electronic timing device. And a guy at the University of Colorado is the guy who developed this machine or this device. And the only ones in the world were the ones that he made. And he had done it for the U.S. Olympic ski teams.
Okay.
And so we were using one, Dallas was using one, and I think Buffalo, no, not Buffalo, Cleveland was the other one using it. Cleveland, now Baltimore. Gotcha. So going back to when it was those Cleveland Browns. But I remember I was in the Detroit airport, and at the old terminal before they tore it all down, and then they had that big long, I don't know if you've been in it recently, but they got this big, huge, long terminal in Detroit. Well, it was a lot different. It was broken up by airline in the old terminal that was there. And there was a Marriott connected right to, I think, Terminal 2. And so if I was going to Detroit, I'd stay right at that airport Marriott, right on the grounds or whatever. And then you'd come out of that and you could walk right into the airport, but you had to go through security. And I had this box, and they open it up to look at it. And this is, way before 9/11. Yeah. And they look at it and go, what the fuck is this? And you try, you sure this isn't some sort of bomb? It was tough. You get scrutinized.
Absolutely. So then you've got people evaluating players. One of the things I've always wanted to know is during that process of evaluating, is there anyone kind of keeping an eye on the contract status of players? So does, whether a player is signed for multiple years or his contract is coming up, does that figure in at all to the evaluation of the players that were under you, the scouting staff?
Well, I think I understand what you're trying to say. And it's like, again, go say the last couple of weeks where the position coaches are going through learning their new players. And you could tell them, what their status is.
Okay.
This guy, you got to be sure on this guy, let's say for Daniel's case, because his contract's up and we either got to try to re-sign him or we let him hit free agency.
Right.
Or you let him hit free agency. If a guy gives you an unrealistic number and you let him hit free agency to see what the real number is.
Right.
What the market value is. So there's those kinds of decisions that were made.
Right. Because my excuse me for interrupting. My thought is, do people say, well, we got a potential out on this guy's contract, coming up March 1st. So, evaluate them with really super keen eyes, because if we can save X amount of money by cutting them, then let's do it. Conversations like that.
Okay. Yeah. Go back and you're with the team for a few years. You've been there for a few years. That's being done during the course of the year. You're seeing how you're making a determination if you want to bring a guy back or not.
Makes sense.
If he needs a haircut. But now it's all different. It's got to be all done very quickly.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes and yes, but they're two different yeses.
Yeah.
If you follow what I'm saying. Absolutely. So now it's a whole new crew as far as decision makers. Mm-hmm. And so they've got to learn the roster in shorthand, or at least what they think the roster is, in a very short period, because once they get done with the evaluation thing, and I would think they're pretty close. If they're not done, they're pretty close to being done. Mm-hmm. Then they got to get into veteran free agency, and then the draft. And the college coaches, or the college coaches, the teams coaches, they might not even be involved in the draft process that much this year, because they're so involved with what they got player wise.
Right. The other thing that is of interest to me during this process is, do people take a look at what the draft might feel like in 2023? So are there people on the staff saying, well, we really should look deeply at this position because the 2023 draft is probably not going to have anything going on at that position. And so it'll have to be either free agency or develop from within. Are people, when evaluating talent for the upcoming season, are you also looking down the road at what resources might be available from free agency and the draft?
Okay, it's a good question. And you don't have a ton of information on next year's guys yet. You got too much work to do doing this year's guys.
Yeah, right.
Okay, you half-ass know that, especially if it's a good player. So let's say he was a sophomore and he was never redshirted. His junior year would be his third year out of high school, and then, which means he could make himself draft eligible. So, you're making note of when you're on the road during the fall, you're making note of these guys. And so you'll get a pretty good idea of what's going to be available in your area, but you haven't looked at them in depth. You could, generalize and say, yeah, this guy could be a first rounder, this guy, but is he definitely a first rounder? No, they're guessing because they haven't been really put through that really scrutinized process that happens the following year. But what's going to be difficult with this crew, especially coming in mid-January and late January, is that, they've got to catch up on the college stuff. Now, Ryan knows what he thinks about the players that he scouted during the year. Mm-hmm. Got a pretty good idea of what Kansas City felt, because they probably had meetings in December like everybody else does. So he knew who that team liked and didn't like. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if when he's sitting in the meetings, he's taking notes, and he, anything that he had stored in his computer, if I was him, I would have been making copies of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, and the same thing with Cunningham, who came over from Philly. So you've got that. Now you're not going to have the hard copy reports. They'd have their own hard copy reports, but nobody else's from those other places. But they still got a general idea, because I know in both cases, Kansas City and Philly had December meetings. Mm-hmm. So, and that's, we've discussed it before. That's when you start cutting down the process, or mm-hmm. cutting down the players. Yeah, to a more workable number. Mm-hmm. And poor guy gets cut before you even know he's on a team. He's already cut, so he doesn't realize it. So now you got to mesh that together and say, okay, look, I think, without getting into fine detail, because there's still, accumulating information. You got to get the medical information and how that's going to fit and everything else. You're saying, okay, this is going to be a strong area in the draft, or a strong area in that there's depth.
Gotcha.
And we don't have a first. So I need certain, here's what I need between free agency and the draft. I need, say, 5 players. Mm-hmm. They can come in and play, mm-hmm. At various positions. And they're going to look and say, what's the best way we can do that? If one of them, say, is an interior offensive lineman, and I got to get 2 receivers, and I got to get a corner, and I got to get a safety, or whatever, then they're going to say, well, I might have to get the corner in free agency, and that means you're spending money. Maybe I can get the wide receivers in free agency and not have to spend a lot of money to get the guys I like. Mm-hmm. So you got to make those decisions. And so really what you're going to do with the draft, even though you've got an ongoing ranking going, mm-hmm. you're not really focused on that until April. Gotcha. Okay. Now, yeah, you've got a running board going depending on the grades, and what it's there. But I mean, you're not setting up your plan mm-hmm. for the draft. And that gives you, 3.5 weeks to 4 weeks in April to set up a plan for the draft. And that's going to be based on what they already did in free agency. Yeah. But they're not going to go into free agency and at least I don't think so, that you would, if you think that there's a good chance of getting a quality interior offensive lineman, saying, I'm just throwing positions at the wall here.
Sure.
Okay. We can get one in the 2nd or 3rd round based on the depth of the draft. So I don't have to get him in free agency. Mm-hmm. And then I got him on a rookie contract. So that's how your thinking is, through the series. And what you can get in the draft, and where you can get quality in the draft. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do that in free agency.
Yeah.
Because it's going to cost you more money.
Right. And I think you may have just answered this question from Foster. It says, Greg, would you draft players that would cost more in free agency, i.e. receivers cost more? So sign a free agent lineman and then draft a receiver, or is it draft team needs or best available? So when you're making out your plan for acquisition and you see, well, we've got the draft offers really good players at this position, and so does free agency, but let's let's sign the free agent who is less expensive and then attack it in the draft. Do you
Yeah, no, I know that's knowing what's in both pools.
Right.
You basically got two pools, free agency and the draft, in order to bring in players and trade, but you got to give up something to trade. So it's knowing what's in both pools and how do I best get every need or most of the needs I have filled with quality players. And so, and you got to balance it between the free agency and how much money do you have available?
Exactly.
But they're going to only got 30 guys under contract or something like that, 36. So they've got to sign a lot of guys.
It's scary.
You're not going to have more than 8 or 10 rookies on a team. So at the most, so that means there's going to be guys signed. A lot of them are going to be signed at 1-year deals.
Right. Yeah. As an aside here, because we've got a couple of questions regarding Akeem Hicks. Toreen says he saw a price list for defensive ends, defensive linemen. It says Hicks is ranked 33rd at $5.5 million, and that's market value. I saw that same thing. So, and other people are saying, would Akeem Hicks fit into this defense? So if Akeem Hicks wanted to play for the Chicago Bears at $5.5 million, would that be a good signing?
It's tough to answer now, only because, I remember it was publicized last summer during training camp. Drew Rosenhaus was up in training camp, and that's Akeem Hicks' agent.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously to talk about, he's going into the last part of his contract, last year of his contract, and they were trying to get an extension, and I don't think the Bears were even thinking about an extension at that point. And there's two reasons. There's been durability and age on Akeem's part. When he plays really good. But I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but how many games he missed over the last 2 seasons besides a lot?
Exactly.
So now you're thinking, is that the trend?
Mm-hmm.
And so is $5.5 million might be too much.
Mm-hmm.
Say, wait a minute, because, and I've said this before, in my opinion, my philosophy is that if I'm paying you $5 million, you have to give me $5 million back in production.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Otherwise it's a bad deal for me and a bad deal for the team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I always go, production versus money. Like A-Rob last year, he was getting, he was franchised, so he was getting $17.9 million.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get 17.9 back? No.
Right.
And for whatever reason, you can throw out the reasons, but you didn't get 17.9 back.
Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult really to gauge that value. You look at Akeem Hicks' last regular season game, last game with the Chicago Bears, and what an impact he had on that game. And Tony,
that was the second last game, wasn't it?
That was the second to last. Yeah, he missed
because he didn't play again. Then he got, he played great. And that's exactly what I'm saying. So if he's got to line up and play, 17, I was going to say 16, and 17 games a year.
Right.
You got to have that durability. And he had it at one time.
Yeah.
But the last few years, he hasn't. And so that's what I'm, this is what's going on in Hallis Hall. Mm-hmm. This conversation you and I are having, they're having.
Right.
Okay. Or may have already had it, but it was. And so then you just got to make that decision, and you got to make a determination: can he play within this scheme? And when you look at his size, you say, just right off the bat, you say nope, because he's too big. Mm-hmm. But then you look at his athleticism and how he plays,
mm-hmm.
and actually, even though they were playing a base 3-4,
mm-hmm.
they're really more of a one gap team, and so he wasn't that big two gapper.
Mm-hmm.
So. Could he play in this position or this scheme? Yeah, he can play it, I think, without question.
Mm-hmm.
But do they want him at that $5 million figure and then risk not having him play 8 games again or 9 games, and then it becomes a bad signing. So I can see him going somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, a guy like Akeem Hicks, you couldn't ask him to come in and take a physical before making a determination whether you want to offer him a contract. Can you?
Well, you've got a physical when he left.
Okay, so at the end of the season, every player does a physical. Okay,
he does an exit physical, and he's and there's guys that are checked, flunk physical.
Mm.
They could have an injury from that season that hasn't healed yet.
Yeah,
and because it hasn't healed, it's flunk physical.
Okay,
and then you're going to get into March and April, and sometimes even into they get their preseason medical at the could be mini camp weekend, or it's right before OTA start, but right in that general area, where they have the preseason physical for these guys, and the doctors can flunk them again there, and then he's cut, fail physical, or you can cut him now. If a guy you failed, the day after the last game in a physical, you can cut him today. You can cut him tomorrow. Failed physical.
Well, we'll be before March 1st. There might be some interesting names on that waiver wire or cut list as a result of that. So we've heard from Luke Getsy and Eberflus and so forth. They've talked about that right now. They have started to create a culture and ingrain into the assistant coaches what that culture is, what it should look like, what it should feel like. They've started to talk about concepts. Luke Getsy, I thought he was very eloquent when he said this is not going to be Luke Getsy's offense. This is going to be our offense because there's going to be input coming all around. So that environment, that culture is being set. Then now they're evaluating the players on the roster and seeing what is going on. The next big step, I think, would be then the combine, correct?
Yeah, well, we got to back up a little bit too, because in the meantime, you got coaches. Now, the defensive staff, a lot of these guys have already worked together,
right,
with the Colts. So it's indoctrinating the new guys. The offensive staff, on the other hand, it's all new guys, all coming from different places. So now, okay, what's our scheme going to be? Now, he's stated that the scheme is going to be based on the strengths of the players. Okay, but what's going to be the base concept of the scheme? And you got to assume, coming from Green Bay, it's going to be that system. So your terminology is going to be the same. You might, a lot of the original playbook may be the same. But once you start doctoring with that, once they get into OTAs,
right?
Okay, then when they're seeing guys actually practice and do things, So I think the playbook is going to be a very fluid thing this first year. As they learn their players, learn about their players,
right.
Okay, and now we mentioned it the other show, but there's one good thing this year, being that it's a new staff, that you get an extra mini camp, and that's an extra 3 practices, and that's huge. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge. Where you get to find out what guys can and can't do.
That is huge. And I've got a graphic that I want to put up. Let's see if I can find it first. Darn it. I stole this from our friends over at The Athletic, which is, again, well worth the money. If you're not subscribing to The Athletic, I urge you to consider it because the football writing, it's all sports writing, is outstanding. And this was an article where they talked about potential players to cut and what the savings would be. So Eddie Goldman, if you cut him, you're going to have a cap savings of over $6.5 million. Angelo Black.
But you're also going to have dead money of 5.15.
Yeah. So explain that for those of us who, I mean, I've read the definition multiple times, and sometimes I just forget. Explain what the dead money is.
Well, the dead money comes from the accrued years of the signing bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And the signing bonus is for, even though the guy gets the money year one, in most cases, for accounting purposes, it's averaged over the length of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in Eddie's contract, that means there's we'll just use 5 million. 5 million left in accrued bonus money that he's already been paid. So that if you do it a cut after June 1st, then this year you only get hit with the cap money for this year, and then the last, say, 2 years rolled into next year after June 1st. Before, it's everything that's left on the signing bonus average that gets hit right now. Your cap savings in a lot of cases is what the guy's making in salary. So because that's the cash payout for that particular year.
Gotcha.
Okay. And there might be some bonus clauses in there, like a workout clause or something like that. And that can bring that number down a little bit more. So, but if you're seeing it, like Tariq Cohen, well, okay, you're going to save $2.25 million, but he's also costing you 3.5. And you just got to say, what's going to be more worthwhile? I'm getting more money, but it's costing me, am I really saving money on the cap because I got all that dead money? Because I'm just looking at that right from here. It's 10, 11, 12, it's 16, 17 million dollars. Just looking at it real quick in dead money. So that's money that's spent and you're not getting anything for it.
So this has an enormous influence on what you're going to do, right? Is factoring in this dead money. I mean, the Bears have run up like a credit card bill, like I used to when I graduated from college, and all these credit card companies were sending me credit cards. Oh, we're giving you $5,000 because you got a college degree, and all of a sudden I look at these credit card statements and I owe them.
Yeah, and then they're charging you 22% because you didn't read that part.
Exactly, man. I dig a hole for myself. Anyway, so they're definitely factoring all that in terms of, so what is the danger when you keep deferring money to next year and so forth? So you're kind of hamstrung in certain ways, aren't you?
Well, you got to be careful with that. And so and you really get stuck is when you need money, and so you take guys that you anticipate are going to be here long term, and you restructure the contract, and you're not really doing anything other than changing the accounting of the contract. So you can change salary. Let's say a guy's supposed to make $8.1 million in salary this year. So you say, okay, I'm going to change that. I'm going to give him $100,000 a game. So that would take 1.7 million of that 8 million. That would be now the salary number, and the remaining 6-point-something million would be put into the bonus category, and now it's amortized over the remaining years of the contract. So it saves you money this year, but sooner or later you got to pay the piper. Well, you just, if you're not getting hit with it now, you're getting hit with it next year.
Right. And so because up until the pandemic, the salary cap was increasing by an average of $10 million a season, general managers like Ryan Pace said, well, we don't have to worry about that because the additional cap dollars will cover that. And that was a good strategy until the pandemic. And all of a sudden he found himself in a huge.
And he wasn't the only one.
Yeah. Right.
So a lot of teams got caught in that because that's part of how, every December they got the cap managers have a meeting. The December owner meetings, they aren't as they last 2 days and they're in Dallas, and they're not as comprehensive as the March meetings are. But the December ones, there's a lot of financial decisions made, and part of that is the cap, and what the projected cap for the following year, what the projected cap is for the next 3 and 4 years. Based on today's figures, but as we saw with the pandemic, today's figures aren't always accurate. It's always a guesstimate.
Yep. Yeah, and no one is going to sit around and say, well, in case there's a pandemic, we should be careful, guys. No.
Yeah, since we never had one.
Right. Okay. So what am I leaving out then in this period between now and the combine that is important to share with our audience in terms of what's going on at Halas Hall and building this roster?
Well, they got to make a determination that's actually after the combine. The league year starts, the 16th or something like that?
Yes, March 16th. Yeah.
Okay. So if there's guys you want to sign and not hit free agency, you can sign them. I saw today somebody signed a guy who was about to become a free agent. So you can start doing that right now and get some of these deals done. I just think with the in the Bears situation, until they really get a pretty good handle on what they're dealing with, some of that's going to be pushed to the back burner. Like one of our favorite friends had a tweet yesterday or this morning or something about, 80% chance Daniel's not going to be here. His asking price is too much.
The $10 million is supposedly asking for, yeah.
Whatever. No. How do they know that? He doesn't know that. I don't know that. You don't know that. And I guarantee the people in Halas Hall don't know that.
Right.
Halas Hall. Halas Hall don't know that. Because
Halas Hall. With Ryan Pace. Excuse me, Ryan.
Because it's part of that. It's part of that process. And then you're going to determine, the new line coach has got to say, I want this guy. I think this guy could be pretty good. Hell, he's 24 years old. If there's something wrong, I could fix it. And so until that's done, everything else is on hold. And don't forget, there's no Joey Lane.
Right.
So somebody's doing the contracts. He's got to be the guy that is talking to the people. And there's a protocol that you use in talking. You don't necessarily want to be the first guy to call.
Oh, why is that?
Because then you're in a point of weak. You're in a weak area. I'm calling you. You're controlling you're already in control. Like when you trade down or whatever. Put it this way: when a team calls to trade up, he's already at a point of weakness because he's saying, I want to go up. And so I might be able to squeeze you a little bit harder.
Yeah.
You've got the chart, but the chart is a guide. The chart is not an absolute. And so it's just, like I say, it's a protocol. Now, you could do what I did during the draft or actually before in the week leading up to the draft. And you could basically put out there that you may be interested in moving. And then, you draw a line in the sand. I want to move, but, I really don't want to move more down than, say, 6 slots. Okay. Because then there's a drop off in the value of the player. So then So you call all 6 teams behind you.
Mhm.
Say, hey, look at my guy's probably not going to be there. If that's the case, we're thinking of moving down.
Mhm.
And just wanted to let you know, if you have any interest, get back to us. And generally speaking, they're not going to get back to you until draft day. But they know that you're willing to go. Now it becomes up to them to make the call.
Mhm.
Because if I keep making a call to trade down, then I'm weakening my position.
Right. A lot of speculation in the chat room. People talking about, should we trade this guy? Can we trade this guy? Let's entertain one of these. Does Eddie Goldman have any trade value? And I know that there would be a dead money hit on the team by trading him. But
it's the same thing as cutting the money. If you trade them or you cut them,
it's the same thing.
Cap wise, it's the exact same thing.
Right.
And you're bringing in then a new contract, unless you're trading them for a draft choice.
Right. And you've got to then replace him. And so that's an additional money. So you're getting hit from both sides.
Well, yeah, but theoretically, I mean, you're replacing him with another body if you get a draft choice.
Right.
Or whatever. So, yeah, you can do, it's the same thing really as money wise. We're just talking money in this discussion. The money wise, it makes no difference.
And just as an aside from our thematic conversation here, does Eddie Goldman want to play football? Have you heard anything about what happened in 2021? He wasn't returning Matt Nagy's calls. He seemed disinterested. When he played well, he played really well. How do you evaluate what's going on? What are you hearing about Eddie Goldman?
Well, yeah, a guy in the media that I know really well thinks that he doesn't love football, but that's his opinion. I don't think he's got it as cold, hard fact. So, and if that's the case, then if you don't have that's part of the football character equation that I always talk about. And that's, and if you listen to Coach Flus and some of those other guys, they want guys that have a strong passion for the game, and that desire to be great. If Eddie, and I'm throwing a dart at the wall here. So I don't want to be labeled saying, you said this about Goldman. No, I'm just being in particular about it. But if you see his productions like this, then, well, and I got to pay him X amount of dollars, and I'll go back to, I got to get back what I'm paying him. And then if that's not the case, then okay, you say we're going to go the other way. Now, from a physical standpoint, do I think he can play in this scheme? Yes, because really he's not Ted Washington. He's got some pass rush value. It's more of a push than actual moves. And he isn't that two gapper. He can two gap, but he can do more than that. He can line up in the gap and one gap and get penetration, and he's real strong. So I think with him, there's going to be, because there is some stuff out there, and who knows what's true and what's not true, is that one of the things that Coach Flus, Coach Williams, the defensive coordinator, and then the new defensive line coach, they're going to get this guy on the phone and talk to him, do a Zoom call, and try to get a feel, or have him come up to Hallis if he's in town, and just get a feel for him. And then again, you make a decision, and that's all the little stuff that you don't know about, or you don't read about, that is really happening. And they got to do that with a number of people.
Well, we do know that last season, Eddie was very difficult to get a hold of. Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy weren't even sure he was showing up to training camp. They had maybe one conversation during the off season, and it was frustrating, I think, for Pace and Nagy. And somebody said maybe somebody in the chat room said maybe Eddie Goldman was dissatisfied with Matt Nagy and wasn't inspired to play for him, but nonetheless, you're being paid. You should at least answer the phone.
Right. No, I agree with that. But they're trying to do all this stuff. And really, when you think about it, there's an enormous amount of work to be done because they're all new.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to figure out who you want, figure out who you don't want, figure out who you want in free agency. Fans can sit and put out, oh, they're going to be interested in this guy. They're going to be interested in that guy.
Right.
It's not that easy.
Right.
And so there's a lot of thought that goes into these things.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's money. And, we've mentioned the Green Bay receivers. Well, the coordinators work with these guys for years.
Right, right.
So he knows them. So if he says, I want these guys on the team,
mm-hmm.
then they're going to be guys that they're going to go after.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's going to cost a draft pick or not, because you could say to yourself, can I get a receiver in the third round? Let's say, that Lazard gets tendered at a third round level.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to say, is there a receiver I can get in the third round that's going to be as good as him?
Mm-hmm.
And there's really one guy in the room that can answer that, and that's Coach Getsy. Because he's worked with him, the last 3 years, his whole career.
Exactly.
So he knows exactly what the guy can do, and he's going to say, okay, he's going to be in a little different role here because Adams, he doesn't have Adams on the other side, so he's going to have to step up, but I think he can easily do it. Or he could say, you know what, I don't know. He is what he is. That's what I see his ceiling is.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I could say that's a guy we want to go, but who knows him better than anybody? Getsy does.
Yeah, exactly. The Bears, of course, need some weapons for Justin Fields. And Tony asked this question: would you trade the second-round pick for a guy like Calvin Ridley or Michael Thomas or Amari Cooper? Can you see the Bears making a deal with their second-round draft pick for an established veteran wide receiver to pair up with Darnell Mooney?
No. First of all, Calvin Ridley didn't play the last part of the year for whatever reasons, mental reasons,
right?
Mental health reasons,
right?
I mean, you got to know what that is first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you got to do your due diligence, and you got to know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Thomas has, been hurt much of the last 2 years.
He didn't play at all last season, right?
Yeah, and been in the. Oh, I think he might have played a little bit, but he's been in the doghouse a lot with Sean Payton. Sean's not there anymore,
right?
But if he's a problem for you, why isn't he going to be a problem for me? And again, and it's versus how much I got to pay him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and Amari Cooper, he's not getting any younger.
Mm-hmm.
And how good is he going to be? I don't know. How old is he now? 28, 29?
Let me do a quick check. I'll tell you. Amari Cooper age. Yeah, and it's interesting to me why his stats aren't even more inflated. He's only 27, so he's
okay. You'd be getting him at prime time, but he's not a free agent. You gotta trade for him.
You gotta trade that second round draft pick.
Okay, yeah, well, maybe Dallas wants more in a second.
Yeah,
so is it worth it? And then and part of it too is how much time's on that contract.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he's got 2 years left on the contract, you think about it, because then you really get to know him, and then you're talking about another extension. If he's got 1 year, it could be a rental.
Mm-hmm.
And what's that do for you?
Yeah, right.
When you're trying to build a program, you got to do it the right way. I'm against the Bears unless there's some special to be found. This particular year, going after a big ticket acquisition,
mm-hmm.
money acquisition, but again, it's going to be what these guys' evaluations are.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen stuff, on Twitter, there's these Orlando Brown and the guy down in Jacksonville, they're going to be free agents. The Bears should go after these guys.
DJ Shark. Right.
No, that Shark's the wide receiver, but their left tackle is a free agent too.
Okay.
The Alabama guy.
Cam
Robinson. But guys like that, experienced left tackles,
mm-hmm.
they're getting some money now. Their agents saying, "Show me the money," and the team's showing it. And so, do you really want to do that?
Right.
And you drafted a guy last year. Now, granted, this crew didn't draft him, but they drafted a guy in the second round
mm-hmm.
last year to be the left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think he can be the left tackle just from watching what I saw. And you take away, and when you figure in that he had no off-season program, he had the off-season program, he had no training camp. Mm-hmm. So live reps. When you figure that in, and then you see how he played, you understand why he had some bad plays, because again, it was no reps, no training. So now, can he really be the player that you want him to be? And I was looking at a comment, that's why I hesitated for a second, about Orlando Brown. Yeah, so Orlando Brown knows Ryan Poles. They worked at the same team. That doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
No, it means something? Money.
Money.
When I got divorced in 1994, I told you that my lawyer said, don't listen to what anybody says. It's about the fucking money.
The quote of the day. Maybe ever.
That's all it's about. And so,
speaking of money, Amari Cooper is going to make a boatload. Over $20 million is guaranteed on the 5th day of the new league year. And
so that's around the 21st or 22nd of March.
Right. And the Dallas Morning News is reporting that he might be released by the Cowboys because there is a potential out on his contract before that league year, and they would face like a $5 or $6 million cap hit.
Well, there's probably a voided year.
Yeah. So Cooper might be on the street trying to negotiate a contract with the Bears or other teams. So
now here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If a guy has voidable years in his contract, and there's a date set when the void starts, and like I say, the little returner the Bears have,
mm-hmm.
I keep forgetting his name. His contract goes void today.
Mm-hmm.
He can sign tomorrow with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
He can sign tomorrow with the Bears too, but he's a free agent after today.
Right.
And so there was a list. I don't know if you follow Joel Core. He's a former agent, and he writes for CBS.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff. Okay, he had a thing. He had a list of a bunch of guys. The date of their voidable contract has to be set, and then what it's going to cost. The article was out yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of an interesting thing, how many guys are going to be available. So relationships mean more, I think, going back to that one question that popped on the screen. Yeah, a relationship can help with the general manager, but the relationship really counts with the people that are coaching you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I want to go to so-and-so place because they're going to give me a boatload of money. But they still got to want to go there and want to play for a certain coach or be, there's certain players on that team that they had past experience with or whatever, and want to play with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the one thing about, before free agency starts, and a perfect example of a signing we did at the Combine.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago was Moose Muhammad.
Wide receiver who was acquired from Carolina.
Well, yeah, he was cut by Carolina. So he was on the street. He was like a cap casualty or something. So he was on the street, and we had the deal done within a couple of days, and it was all done in Indy during the combine.
Interesting. So
like it got done at 2 a.m. because I got a phone call.
Yeah, so that was actually part of my questioning here. So at the combine, when you're there to evaluate college prospects, there are other meetings going on with agents of veteran players, right? And so that has to be like an action movie, but with just words. There's got to be conversations here, conversations here. I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that. This guy's reporting that. That's got to be a whirlwind of mental action.
Everybody involved in the league is at the combine. So you got the coaches, the front office, you got your cap guy there. Your medical people are obviously there because of the combine, but your whole personnel staff is there. So you've got every team is got people, a lot of people there, and basically it's a convention that goes on for just under a week, and every agent is there too, because the NFLPA has a meeting for the agents and the Agents Association. So it's that's an all-day thing. So they got to be there for that. But you're doing, theoretically, you can't negotiate a contract with some of these free agents from other teams. Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff being done down at Indy. And you don't have to lock into certain figures, but you'd say, and I'll just use the name Joel Siegel because I know Joel. And Joel, if you're listening, I'm sorry, I'm not saying you do this. I'm just using your name. So here's Kyle Fuller's agent.
Okay.
But he says, hey, Joel, you got this player. What's it going to cost? Well, I've talked to about 4 teams already. It's going to cost you at least $12 million a year. So you're getting that type of stuff. And then you're gonna, does he want to come here? Do we got a chance? And you can't talk to the guy because it's, that would be tampering.
Right.
So, but the agent can. Even though you're not supposed to be talking to the agent, that's what, let's just, say what really happened.
Marty has an interesting question here. Orlando Brown had one of the worst combines ever, and Greg is a historic comp guy. Would he have taken Brown off his board?
That's a great question, especially with that particular player. First of all, his tape was outstanding. His tape from Oklahoma was first-round quality tape. Okay, and then his combine was atrocious. But there's a little more to the story with him as far as I'm involved. And that there used to be, ESPN used to televise this competition with draft eligible players. I forgot what the name of it was called, the All-Star Challenge or something like that.
Right.
And actually the production company was right out of here in Chicago that did it. And then ESPN did the televised thing. So they came to me and wanted me to interview combine-like about 7 or 8 of the players.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so, and then it was on tape and it was used for commercials. I think Edward Jones was was one of the sponsors.
Yeah, okay.
And so these were used as part of Edward Jones commercials.
Cool.
But taken in the context, well, this is what a football team needs to find out about a player, and this is what we need to find out about you, as far as, making financial investments and stuff. So these would be 10, 12-minute interviews that I did, and one of which was Orlando Brown. And
Fascinating.
yeah, and the other, the tight end Andrews, who plays for the Ravens, where he was another guy. They were both at this thing. So I got to know these guys a little bit, you know, that handful of guys. But he was one, and and this was before the combine. This was done. This was done a couple weeks before the combine. It was done down at the Cowboys Stadium.
Okay.
And you know, you got to talk to these guys and learn about them. And you could see his movement skills. You knew he wasn't going to have a good combine. And then he had the combine, and the combine was atrocious. And then people started killing him. He still went, what, second or third round, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and has become a very good player. Yeah. So there's some guys that outplay the measurables, because his measurables were just horrendous. You know, but again, what's the most? You look at the measurables and then you look at the tape, and they don't coincide.
Right. Third rounder, by the way, pick number 83 overall.
Okay, so he's mid-third round guy.
This is beyond fascinating to me. I mean, I love this stuff.
We can go a little longer here.
Great. All right. And I'm going to, if you got questions in the chat room, get them in quickly and we'll get to those. I want to see what you think about what Alex Sims wrote. He noted that Olin Kreutz said he's heard that they're moving Cody Whitehair back to center. And I've seen that throughout social media. I guess Olin may have been the first one to report that. What are your thoughts? Does that mean that maybe, if this is true, does that mean maybe that they're saying, okay, we're not going to pursue James Daniels because maybe he is asking for too much, or we've evaluated the tape and we think we could, you know, find some better solutions to our offensive line issues? Your thoughts?
Well, wanting to move him to center and being able to move him to center are two different things.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so. And that's what you're going to use the off-season program for. Now, what was his problem at center? Snapping the ball. And what's the most important thing that the center's got to do? Snap the ball.
Exactly.
So he had so many when you're in a when you're in a gun offense, he had a ton of bad snaps.
Yeah,
and they had to move him. You know, because it was just killing the offense. So. Unless he's got that part fixed, you know, and maybe center is the best position. Now, he was a left tackle in college at Kansas State. And then, you know, they drafted him really to play guard and ended up having to put him at center. And he wasn't, you know, he wasn't bad, but then he started getting bad with the short snap.
Right.
And he even changed his technique. Let me get my ball here.
Oh, I love it. We've got show and tell here.
Okay. A lot of guys, you know, they snap and they're holding the ball like this through their legs on that short snap. Well, that's where he was sailing it all over the place. So now he was doing it where the ball's on the ground and he's holding it like this.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see that. And then flipping it back.
Right.
And so... And he was having then more success when he fundamentally changed how he snaps the ball. But, you know, what I'm getting to too is once they get into the off-season program, and after the first couple of weeks of conditioning, you can start going out on the field with these guys for about a time each day. It's like an hour and a half or something. And you can do drills with them. You can work with them. You can't go offense against defense. So the offense is at one end of the field, the defense is, and it's usually all broken up to position. You know, you got very little team type concepts going on. So, but it's in these things, they could start working with this guy and see, okay, what the problem is, and that if it's a fixable problem. So that's why I say it's easier said than done. if there had never been a problem with him snapping the ball, I'd say, sure, why not?
Mm-hmm.
But there has been that problem. And he is under contract for a few more years.
Mm-hmm.
So, it could be better for them to make that decision and keep him under the current contract, which is a reasonable contract for a starting player in the league, and then find a less expensive alternative for the right guard position via either the draft, another free agent, or somebody that's already here, on the team, that once they get to know him, they're going to find out, oh, shit, he's pretty good.
Yeah. Greg, one of the things that worries me when you're building an offensive line, and again, I'm just a fan, I don't know much. So, but it's going into a season and counting on a rookie, to be a starter on the offensive line. Am I being too paranoid about that? Is that something that you would feel comfortable saying, okay, our second round draft pick is a plug and play player?
Yeah. I mean, that's why you got scouts. Now, you're not going into the draft guessing that he can be a plug and play player. You're saying, I know he can be a plug and play player.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's part of that evaluation. So, you look at it and say, okay, I can get this guy in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a first round pick, so you got to look at second round. I know we can get this guy where we're picking in the second round,
mm-hmm.
and he can start for us, and he upgrades us.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you got a guy on a rookie contract. Now, yeah, could it be like a Tevin Jenkins and he hurts his back? Well, yeah, but that's, you don't plan for that because you don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I don't like hearing this. Some people want to wash Jenkins when, okay, he had an issue. The issue's fixed. And once he got it fixed, it didn't bother him.
Right.
After that. And so, and the training staff said after, this should never be a problem again. Nobody said exactly what it is. But, it's an issue. It's behind him. He got it repaired. He should be able to go. It's just, okay, where's he playing? Is he going to be a left tackle? Is he going to be a right tackle? Well, if he goes to right tackle, you're going to put Borum at right guard. Now who's your left tackle going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And he ain't on, if it's not Jenkins, he's not on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got to go out and get one. Okay, so are you going to go out and try to get Orlando Brown? Well, you know what Orlando Brown's going to cost you? You got to know, so it's that type of thing that you're looking at.
Right. I love this question from Michael. What does Eberflus value? Why does Eberflus value the slot corner where Lovey valued the safety? Is how much our teams are? Is it because how much the teams are now in the nickel defense?
I guarantee you that's what it is. Because when Lovey first came here in 2004, you weren't playing nearly as much sub as you're playing now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now your base defense basically now is your sub package
mm-hmm.
with 5 defensive backs. And so you've got to have a lot. What some teams are doing now is, the chess game of matchups. So, okay, Bears got a lousy slot corner. I'm putting my best receiver in the slot this week.
Yeah.
Okay. And teams do that all the time.
Yep.
So, especially teams that are innovative, because
mm-hmm.
you want to win the matchups.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different route for the slot guy that he's doing, totally different position. He's off the line of scrimmage instead of on the line of scrimmage in most cases. Mm-hmm. He can be in motion in a lot of cases. So, but now for the corner, because teams are doing this, You got to have a guy in there that you can trust. But there's so many different types of slot corners when you look, or slot receivers, that you can't necessarily get tied in, even though some of the slot receivers are generally smaller. That's not always the case. And so you got to get a guy in that position that can match up against the majority of receivers in the league. So what's that say about Duke Shelley? He's a tough, competitive guy, but he's still 5'8.5" or something. So you can't have him playing against a 6'2" guy. He's just going to get killed.
Yep. Tony says Casey Hayward would be a great fit. I like that idea. He's a free agent veteran guy. Someone worth.
Well, it's again, what are we going to do with the offense? Is it going to be predominantly, or the defense? Is it going to be predominantly zone or man to man? And that's going to be determined on who's playing corner. The Tampa 2 is a zone defense. Playing too deep, but when you got it, and we did that a lot Lovey's first year, but then we had Fuller on one side and Peanut on the other side, and it's like, no, we're playing press, because these guys can do it.
Yeah,
and you're better off in that sometimes in zone. And you mix it up. It's not like you're going to be 100%.
Exactly,
but it's. What are the strengths of the players? That's why, somebody, and I'm not criticizing Tony for the question, just saying, okay, the first thing you do is, okay, you see the name. Okay, that looks like a good name. Let's go after him. Well, no, we got to look at tape and see if he's got the traits that we really want. And how is his, and then go back and let's look at 20 tape compared to 21. And was he the same player or did he fall off a little bit?
Yep.
Because when they start to fall off, they aren't climbing back up the hill again.
Tony wrote what I was going to say, that the new defensive coordinator says that they're going to run whatever the guys, they're going to run a defense that's suitable to the strengths of the players that they have. And that means Jalen Johnson will stay in man most of the time. You agree with that part of his comment?
Well, if he's playing in man, the other corner is going to be playing in man. You're not going to be zone one side man. I mean, you can do it, but still if you got a lot of crossing routes and stuff like that, you're really screwing people up.
Yeah, it gets a little complicated.
So Jalen can play man, but you got to know the other guy can play man. And if you don't have a guy on the other side that can do it, then you're going to be in trouble.
I'm of the contention that the Bears should not give up on Kindle Vildor. I know he had some tough games towards the latter part of the season, and he was benched. They brought in the old guy, Artie Burns. He's not that old, but what are your thoughts on Kindle? What do you do with a player like that? I mean, you've gone through the evaluation process. What do you think his career with the Bears and in the NFL, frankly, is salvageable?
Based on what I saw in college, yes, because I really liked his college tape.
Yeah,
I mean, he would hit. He had great ball skills. He has when you look at the testing numbers, he has everything that you want to play the corner position. He's not the tallest guy, but he's got real long arms. So that makes him play a little bit taller than he is because his arm length is so long. But it's put it this way. I'm not going to let him go before camp. I want him in OTAs and I want him in camp and I want him to come compete. And then I can make an intelligent decision. But again, going through the process they're going through now is, the defensive back coaches and the coordinator who was a corner coach, they're looking at him and saying, well, this is fixable. This is what he's doing wrong. I can fix that. And part of it too is, what's up here? And there's a question here, can Graham play?
Right.
I think Graham can play. Now, they kept him on the practice squad most of the year, and then he got a chance to play near the end of the year. He played pretty good. What was going on that they didn't trust him enough to have him on the 53 and they had him on the practice squad?
Well, and Graham did address that. He said, his confidence took a hit once he was cut by the Bears, and sitting out his last season at college because of the pandemic, he said really hurt me. And so after he was cut, he had a talk with Ryan Pace. Pace told him continue to work on this. Actually provided, this was one of the good things that Pace did. He really helped develop the kid, said, work on this, work on that, and so forth. And it wasn't until the middle of the season working in the scout team where Graham said, I'm feeling pretty good now. I'm feeling like I can play. And so that could be one of the success stories that Ryan Pace has left with the Chicago Bears.
Okay, but now you're leaving part of the equation on the table there.
Okay.
And that's the conversation was with Ryan Pace. And who the hell knows where Ryan Pace is right now?
he and Matt Nagy.
You got a different guy coaching him, and you got a different guy at the general manager position, and another guy at the assistant GM position.
Yeah,
you do have your holdovers in the scouting department and in the pro department that are going to know and they can speak up.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to see maybe some of the poor practice, if there was poor practice tape in the preseason, because decisions aren't just made on a preseason game. They're made on what they do in practice every day,
mm-hmm.
and everything is taped. Mm-hmm. So you got to see that constant effort. And these guys, if you listen to Coach Flus, effort plays a big part into how he wants to play the game. So if he sees loafs, then that's going to be ingrained in their brain. So now a guy, like Graham has got to really step up once they get on the field, start doing stuff.
Yep. Indeed. Matt Eberflus said in his inaugural debut press conference that he reached out to Matt Nagy. And so Tony's got a question here. If you're posed, do you get Pace on the phone or do you make your own analysis? Is there any value, or do you see that potentially happening where the guy that succeeded you gives you a call to get your thoughts on players?
Well, here he says Poles and Pace in
right.
the question, and they already have a relationship. They work together in Kansas City.
Oh, okay. So it wouldn't be out of the question.
Yeah, so he can say it, and I would think that Nagy's going to give as honest an answer as he can,
mm-hmm.
and why certain decisions were made. And go from there. Does he have to do it? No. Does he, or does he even want to do it? Who knows? But it can be done.
Well, and in fact, it makes a great point. Poles has most of Pace's scouts working for him this offseason.
Right, but they were really, well, they're Pace's scouts, but Lucas was the director of player personnel. All those guys are still here. It was just the decision makers are already gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that, a lot of times you wait until the draft to get rid of, you hold on to them. And Ryan got rid of them right away. Mm-hmm. He didn't want them in the building, didn't want their influence in the building for whatever reason. And you'll never know the answer to what that reason is.
This has been a fascinating 90 minutes of football talk, and we've just scratched the surface really about putting together this football team. So on our next show, we'll continue this conversation, and I'm sure we'll have some more information to work from as to, actually more information, more speculation, because nobody is really sharing any news right now that we can say, take it to the bank. This is absolutely true. It's like you have always said, since I've met you, this is the season where you don't believe anybody, right?
No, it's called the lying season.
The lying season. Yeah.
And I created the word. Don't let anybody else tell you. I'm the first one to use it.
All right. Let's put that on a t-shirt and copyright it.
And it's just that everything everybody tells you in public is a lie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. it's
And I'll tell you a quick funny story before we go off. So going back to Roquan draft and Quentin Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
So I called Ballard to get his. It seems like I always tell a Ballard story every show. I called Ballard to get his view on some players, and I never try to pin them down, but in that draft I think they were picking 5th or 6th, and the Bears were what, 8 or 9 or something like that. They were only a few slots, maybe there were 7 and just 2 slots lower than the Colts or something. So I asked him, when we get to Quentin Nelson, and he goes, well, there might be a knee issue there. I really like the player, but there might be a knee issue. I don't know if it's going to be a concern. That's how he's saying it, right? And then I really like that Roquan. And he goes, oh, Greg, he goes, you know me, how I am with those defensive players. So I'm thinking he's taking Roquan. And the Bears are going to get Quentin Nelson.
Oh, man, I would have loved that.
And so, that's what I'm thinking. So what happens? Just the opposite. And then he gets Leonard in the second round, which is a gift. But Leonard didn't have a great workout because he was, coming off an injury, and so that I think hurted him a little bit because he was obviously a first round talent. But people were concerned about speed. He can, just watch him. He can run. Right. But here's a guy I brought into the league. I've known for 21 years now. This conversation was a few years ago. But, you think he's going to, he'd tell you the truth all the time? No, he was misleading me.
It's the line season.
It's all right. That's what you do. You lie. Or you can, he didn't say I'm not going to take this guy, or I'm going to take this guy, and I will never ask that. Never, because it's none of my freaking business.
Right.
And you never want to cross the line. So and to put a friend of yours in a situation that becomes compromised or uncomfortable or whatever. So, but you can find out about guys and, what their general feeling is.
Right.
And in that case, he liked both players. I just thought by the way he glowed when he was talking about Roquan that was going to be his guy. And then he brings up that knee issue on Quentin Nelson.
Well, great story. And there's plenty more great stories to come from Greg Gabriel. As soon as I sign him up for the 2022 season, I got to get you some information. I promise to do it. And
you're so full of shit.
I am. You already know me better than most people do. But I promise I'm going to get you that information. And I want to let people know that at 2:00, it's Crosstown Crosstalk. Vinny Parisi will be interviewing Maddie Lee, who is the new beat writer for the Chicago Sun-Times covering the Cubs. And so that's going to be a fascinating interview. That starts in 30 minutes. So that means Greg and I need to leave. Greg, you are the absolute best. I will be talking to you very soon, and we'll work out the schedule for upcoming shows. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
We'll see you later. Bye-bye. Bye.